our preview of the Bank of Ireland Circuit of Ireland Rally, a highlight of the traditional Easter sports programme. And as far as Irish rally fans are concerned, this is the big one. Well, numbers may be down this year, but I can certainly promise you over the next 3 days, the action will be fast and furious, the excitement intense, and we may even get an Irish victory. The first Circuit of Ireland Rally took place 60 years ago. So on this historic occasion, Gary Gillespie, with Sammy Hamill of the Belfast Telegraph, will look back.
The modern Circuit of Ireland is almost unrecognisable from the gentle days of the 50s and 60s, when the rally really was a circuit and the emphasis was on navigation rather than speed. Belfast journalist Sammy Hamill, who wrote a book outlining the history of the circuit, has a special affection for the man who won the first event back in 1931.
The first winner was a guy called Jimmy McCaherty, who was driving in Austin, perfectly straightforward road going Austin in 1931. And I was particularly pleased because when I wrote the book, we managed to find Jimmy, and we brought him together with Jimmy McRae, who then became the 50th winner of the rally, which was quite a unique thing to do. And I became quite friendly with Jimmy McCaherty, and he was a very, very nice man. Unfortunately, he died a couple of years ago.
Now, you mentioned it was a completely standard road-going car. Was that the norm for those days? I mean, what other sort of cars competed in the circuit in the early days?
Oh, very much so. They were just the cars that you bought. In fact, if you go back to the early days of the circuit, you're talking about people who were coming into motoring in the early days. They had a car, they'd learned to drive, and they wanted something to do with the car. They couldn't necessarily go racing because you needed a specialised car for that. But your road-going car could take you out on a rally, and that's what it was all about in those days. Initially, you were just talking about a navigation event, the adventure of getting between point A and point B. And in the old days, 1936, when you went right round Ireland, I mean, that was quite an achievement to complete a Circle of Ireland. But then you got to the point where a number of people were doing that. So you had to find a way of finding a winner at the end of it all. And the driving tests were brought in, and they stayed in the circuit until the 60s.
So when did it become a race then? When was it sort of the flat-out rallying that we see today? Was it in the 60s?
Well, yes. In the 60s, special stage rallying was coming in all across Europe. And the circuit introduced a guy called Robin McKinney, who was in fact a former winner of the event. And he introduced the special stages in the 60s. And that's been the format ever since.
And what about the cars that have been successful over the years? I mean, what do you think the most successful cars have been?
Well, obviously the Ford Escort, which someone wrote a book called The Car That Can't Stop Winning. And that was written in the early 70s. And we're into the 90s now, and the Escort is still winning. All right, not on the Circuit of Ireland, but it's still winning in club rallies. And it won 3 times in a row in the late 60s, and went on to win through the 70s as well.
And of course, the Little Minis, they were very, very successful in the 60s.
Yeah, although strangely enough, I think people think of the Minis as being more successful than they actually were. Through a period from sort of 1964 through to 1968, yes, they won every year. But it was a very short period, a very effective period. But then the Escort came, and that was the end of the Mini era.
Well, we've had 60 years of the circuit. Do you think we'll see another 60?
I doubt it. I don't think so. It'll be different. We'll probably have still some sort of motoring event or something. I just don't know. But rallying is going through a difficult period at the moment. It's such an expensive sport, and that's reflected in the entry of this year's event. It costs £100,000 to put out a car like Colin McRae's Subaru or Bertie Fisher's Sierra. And, you know, how far do you go?
RTE Ulster Television co-productions, we brought you some tremendously exciting rallying, captured in particular by our in-car and on-car cameras. And last year was no different. Then, a fiery Welsh dragon by the name of David Llewellyn drove on to victory in his Toyota. Commentators Alan Tyndall and Gary Gillespie.
The BIF Circuit of Ireland looked like being a two-horse race from the beginning. Ford, represented by Malcolm Wilson, were undoubtedly the favourites, and Toyota had the high-tech GT4 to be driven by David Llewellyn. The first County Antrim stage seemed to prove the pundits right. Wilson was 3 seconds quicker than anyone as he debuts the Group A Sapphire Cosworth in Ireland. David Llewellyn didn't want dry roads, but his prayers would soon be answered. Colin McRae, the Shell Championship leader, was another top contender. But there were other major players, particularly of Irish interest, the BMWs of Bertie Fisher and Austin McHale. Both had suffered pre-start aggravation when the eligibility of their right-hand drive cars was questioned. But that was now behind them, and it was down to the hard work. The privately entered Group A Sierras were also in with a big shout, particularly James Cullen and Ellen Morgan. From Lancashire came Bob Barry and Alan Whitaker in their Sapphire version. And a Lisburn estate agent called Richard Smith had bought Austin McHale's old Cosworth. The Group N showroom category was white hot. The works driver Gwyndaf Evans was the hot favourite, but there was a local right on his tail, Kenny McKinstry. Peugeot had the Swede Håkan Eriksson in the 309 and the English driver Paul Franklin in the 205. Vauxhall had brought Dave Metcalf in the mighty little 1.6 Nova and Chris Birkbeck in the 2-litre Astra. But the best that both Peugeot and Vauxhall could hope for were class honours. Toyota were quick to hit back on stage 2, and by Castlewell in service, the power balance had transferred. Tyre choice was critical, as you can see here.
It's very difficult. I mean, we got 10, 15 miles to a stage now. I mean, it's spotting with rain here, but it's dry, so it's very difficult to know what to do in that situation.
Fisher was the best of the locals in 4th place and driving the tough Mack car beautifully. But there was a new name on the leaderboard, Richard Smith. Sensationally, he was 5th, not bad for a novice at the top level of Group A. Kenny McKinstry was giving Gwyndaf Evans considerable aggravation, and he was now rallying in his own backyard. But the battle was never really fully to develop as the spark went out of the works Sapphire on stage 4. Kenny's Group N opposition was evaporating. Frank Fennell crashed out, and Bob Fowden, the Dunlop Championship Group N leader, would soon retire. By Saturday midday, Llewellyn had 41 seconds over the Ford. The four-wheel drive was playing its part in the wet, but David was driving beautifully. Then came a heart stopper in Monaghan's service. The GT4 sounded ill, terminally ill. But it was easily cured, and the smiles were back when David and Phil received the Hillgrove Trophy for leading the rally in Monaghan. Austin McHale was unhappy with the new French Tarmac spec suspension in the Extravision car. But by the afternoon, he was up to 5th, having demoted Richard Smith, who was driving his old car, and was quite content with 6th place.
No, I'm very, very surprised. Very surprised indeed. I'm very happy about it.
How much of that's due to the car? It was Austin McHale's, wasn't it?
It's all the car. It's all the car. I'm just twiddling the wheel here. The car's fantastic. I really love the car.
James Cullen was up and down the leaderboard all day. 7th on stage 6, 6th on stage 7, 5th on stage 8, and then back to 7th. So overnight, David Llewellyn had a useful 1:11 second advantage over Wilson, and the majority of the stages which were thought to favour the Cosworths were now gone. The wet conditions had undoubtedly favoured the Toyota. Ford now had a major problem on their hands. This was one hell of a way to wake up on Easter Sunday morning. It was 8 a.m. just west of Carlow, and Austin McHale, with a new steering rack fitted to his car, was in a much more confident mood.
right, and left tightens, and easy right cut, 70 caution, very fast right here. Quick right cut, and left cut, and slight right over crest cut, 100, turn square left, 200,
But Austin's BMW buddy, Bertie Fisher, crashed out on stage 14, and a great run came to an end.
Back of the car hit the telegraph pole and spun it through 180 degrees.
All Colin McRae could do in third was to wait and see what would happen to the top two. Wait at 120 miles an hour. As day two wore on, the dramas came thick and fast. Kenny McKinstry on stage 19 is warned of trouble ahead.
repeat 5 right, into 4 left, 40, long 3 left, into gravel and 4 right, maybe.
Trouble for Kenny, but real trouble for Richard Smith, who knocked down the pole.
Gonna have to stop the stage, Kenny. We're gonna be bumped now. No, no, he can lift it round, he can lift it round. No, we just have to accept that we're gonna lose the time.
So Richard Smith's circuit was gone.
Okay, the long 5, just take it easy, Kenny, take it easy, 5 left, into 3 right over crest, 60, 3 left, 40, still on the stage probably. Caution, long crest and 4 left, 100, 4 left, 2 right, maybe, that's it.
There was Richard Smith's car ahead. It didn't look too bad from the back, but the front suspension was gone, and with it, one of the drives of the rally. There was more trouble on stage 22. And this, I'm afraid, is the sad sight of yet another Sierra savaged by the young Colin McRae's inexperience. The McRae legend will take a rest this year, but Colin does get off the stage and amazingly doesn't lose a place.
This year, Llewellyn is driving with Nissan in the African Safari, and the rally here in Belfast has put on a very different face. True, it is still part of the Shell Oils British, the Dunlop Irish Tarmac, the Triple Crown and the European Championships, but the number of overseas visitors is down. In fact, there'll be about 45 going to the start line for the BIF circuit proper. And that entry list is dominated by the Irish.
New car is excellent for these type of stages. They're very bumpy, very twisty, pretty fast, and should suit it very well.
Well, I think if the sunshine remains as it is now and the weather remains fine, the two-wheel drive car I think will be thereabouts. Obviously, if the weather changes, becomes showery or wet, the four-wheel drive cars will have the premium and traction and obviously have the advantage.
Stages up here, we don't know a lot about. We didn't get a lot of time up here, so we hope not to drop too far back tomorrow. Please God, everything works out that we stay going for Saturday and for Sunday and Monday.
It's supposed to be rain tomorrow, which will suit the four-wheel drive cars, but who knows? I mean, they're bumpy stages, they're mucky stages. Any of the stages that don't have that have gravel on them, so they're going to be difficult stages for everyone, two-wheel drive and four-wheel drive. So we'll be after Group N and are trying to get into the top 5.
Well, I hope to do better than I did in Galway. I've had the engine totally rebuilt and upgraded to 1991 spec, and the engine, well, the gearbox has been changed and the suspension, so I hope to do a little bit better than Galway.
Alexander, tell me, how is it that we have 2 rally crews from Estonia competing on the Circuit of Ireland?
In Tallinn, I read in calendar of rallies, all over the rallies. I read that in Ireland is one race, and I know that Ireland is a very beautiful country. And then we all boys think and started our travel.
This year's route is very much along the same lines as last year's, with 200 miles of flat-out driving over 29 special stages, taking in 12 counties. The starting is from Templepatrick, just outside Belfast, at 7 o'clock. and they head off to their first overnight halt at Killiney Castle Hotel via some 12 stages or 80 miles. As well, there'll be service halts at Dungannon, Gorchin, Monaghan and Navan. Sunday, there's another very early start. The cars head off from the borough of Dunleary for 9 stages in counties Carlow and Kilkenny, with service stops in both county towns. That'll be day 2, a total of 60 miles. Day 3 takes those still running into counties Dublin and Wicklow, and the final 8 stages over another 60 miles of closed roads. That includes a spectator stage at Mondello Park about noon, and some classics like Diamond Hill, the Glen of Imal and Glen Cree.
Well, the man responsible for planning that route over the past 12 months is the clerk of the course, Bill Swan. Bill, not too many changes from last year's format, but people are saying the first day is particularly tough.
Well, yes, we sort of don't believe in reinventing the wheel, so therefore we tried to keep the same format. It was very successful last year. Competitors were happy with it, so we hope to keep the same, obviously the same format this year. Day 1 possibly slightly more tough than last year. Obviously, competitors always like to get it easy, so we're trying to keep them at it from the start of the event.
What about the organisation this year? Has it gone smoothly for you? No last-minute problems?
Basically everything. There's always last-minute problems, but nothing I think that we can't surmount.
Everybody's talking about what happens next year. What's your feeling about the future of the circuit?
Obviously 1991 was a particularly important year with being the Diamond Jubilee of the event, and 1992 we'll have to sort of pick up where we have left off, and it's very early days as yet to find ourselves out of the British Open Championship. BIF unfortunately have left us, so we're in a position that we've got to sit down and do some very, very serious thinking, but priority at the moment is to get 1991 successfully and safely out of the way.
And of course, once again, the emphasis is on safety. Have you any last-minute message for the rally fans?
Absolutely. I would once again reiterate, as I have done the past 2 years, that whatever you do, please be safe. Obey the marshals. They're not there to spoil your fun. They're there to help you enjoy the sport and continue rallying and see that the circuit is back next year.
This is also the last year of 3 for the rally's main sponsor, BIF, or Bank of Ireland Finance. Dermot Power of BIF will explain why. Dermot, the decision was taken on what basis?
Well, it really was a business decision, George. It's to do with a change of marketing strategy within BIF, and it was felt that as a result of that change of strategy, that any promotion, be it any rally or anything like this, just wouldn't be the right vehicle for us.
The decision was taken some time ago, so would it be fair to say that the drop in numbers has had no effect on it?
No, the decision was taken last June. Once we made our mind up, we spoke with the UAC, explained our logic to them, and told them immediately. So really, aspects like the smaller numbers really had nothing to do with the decision.
Their problem now is to find a new sponsor. Is it a good vehicle to hang your name on?
Well, that's the point we would like to make. It's been a very good association between ourselves and the UAC, but we can't speak highly enough of their professionalism. And it's been a very good promotion for us, and a promotion we're very happy with. It's just that it's not the vehicle for us in the future.
The hot shoe from abroad this year is young Colin McRae, who will be driving the Rothmans Subaru Legacy. Colin, of course, comes from the McRae family, whose legendary father has won the event 7 times. Colin, can you make it number 1 for yourself and number 8 for the family?
Well, I would like to think so. We've been doing a lot of testing, the car's going really well, but I don't like to say too much before the event.
Some of that testing has been in Ireland.
We were down in Clonmel last weekend and we did a full day's test there. And the car seems to be really good, but we won't know 100% until tomorrow.
Now, the Legacy is a little bit of a question mark on tarmac.
It's the only real tarmac it's done was in Portugal on the first day, and it was going very well there with Marco Allen driving, so I think if we can go as quick as that, then it shouldn't be too much of a problem.
This exuberant display of delight from the normally reserved Bertie Fisher in a Killarney car park last December showed just how much winning the Irish Tarmac Championship has meant to the Fermanagh man. This week, Bertie prepares once again to tackle the circuit, one rally which he's yet to win, and the successful steel business he's built up in the heart of Fermanagh has to take a temporary back seat. The girders being welded here will soon be supporting a Belfast office block, but the chairman of the board has built up quite a support of his own in more than 20 years of rallying.
Well, I did the circuit first in 1969 as a navigator, as it was called then, or a co-driver, for a very good friend of mine who still, in fact, does the odd rally, Ernie Campbell. And I went with Ernie in a Mini as co-driver, and in fact I did that 2 years on the trot, and the second year had probably the worst experience of all in that doing what was maybe supposed to be the easy job in the car and managed to get him lost. And I think we've probably even retired as a result of that.
So what was your first car that you actually drove on the circuit?
My first car was in the Minis. I did the circuit, I think, in 1970 in a Mini Cooper. And we eventually got round the rally and finished and so on. And that was the first go. And I had a succession of Minis, I think, and in the early 70s.
So when did you really move into competitive machinery? Was it with an Escort?
Yeah, the Group 4 Escort, and I finished third behind Penty Rickle and Billy Coleman. And sort of after the Escorts we moved into Opel Ascona, where we finished second overall, and then into the good old Manta days. Manta was a very, very good car. It was very, very suitable and well developed, you know, for the Irish roads. And we had some very, very good results in the Manta days on the circuit.
And of course you switched to the Sierra Cosworths, but I don't think you liked them very much.
No, my first outing with the Cosworth didn't turn out to be really what I expected. It was a car which was owned by Ford, and I never really got to grips with the car, and I think maybe didn't try hard enough to get to grips with it. But no, we only had that car for 1 year, and then moved on to the BMWs.
But in spite of winning the Tarmac Championship in the BMW, Fisher still felt the car wasn't powerful enough and didn't have enough grip in the wet. So it's been sold to Bill Connolly, and a new four-wheel drive Sierra has been selected for Bertie's Circuit Challenge. But the car's first outing 2 weeks ago in West Cork was less than successful.
It was, you know, quite simply driver error. I had made a wrong assessment of what the jump was, and we finished up with the car on its side and end of rally. RED, who prepare and run the car for me, have really done a fantastic job over the last 2 weeks, and have put a lot of work in, and you know, they assure me the car is going to be bike and fit. I would say I'm in with as good a chance to win it as, you know, Colin McRae, Austin McHale, Billy Connolly. There's several people there who can win the rally. You know, we're going to be trying.
Another former Dunlop Tarmac champion, Austin McHale, must be a man to be reckoned with. He won in Galway in February, but today here in Belfast, he was conspicuous by his absence. For as the scene was being set for this three-day rally, he was still out, learning the stages, hoping that, like Bertie Fisher, he can win this event for the very first time. Of course, running behind the battle for the major prizes are the classic cars. Included in that field, Ronnie McCartney and B.T. Crawford.
Well, it's a great pleasure to be back in Northern Ireland. As you know, I left here about 18 years ago to go to the States, and I like to come back regularly. And I did the Circuit of Ireland for probably 15 years, so it's great to be back for the circuit again.
And of course you won it.
Well, I won it with Adrian. I navigated Adrian Boyd in 1971, the Nestart Twin Cam, so it's 20 years this year since I won it. Well, I got the bug last year. Adrian invited me to do the Pirelli Classic last year in a Daimler SP250. And I really enjoyed it so much that I thought, well, I better get into this again. And I thought, well, the only way to really do it is to own my own car. So Ronnie here found me a Mini Cooper from Mervyn Johnson. Mervyn prepared the car and Rob Pollock did the bodywork. And I think I have a very nice little car now.
I'm really pleased at getting the pleasure of driving this car with Beatty, because it's 27 years since I won the event. And a car like this, we're really looking forward to see what it's like on these wee narrow roads. As Beatty said, coming down the road, he says, it's 25 years since I sat in one of these wee boxes. And he says, but it goes remarkably well.
The stages themselves are very, very tight and twisty, very bumpy. Which suits our car quite well. I mean, the big powerful cars will be struggling. Some of the lanes are just the width of a car. And it's extremely bumpy.
This year's circuit isn't solely about four-wheel drive and the ultimate in automotive technology. There's a place for a car like this one behind me, 1964 Sunbeam Tiger, with even more horsepower than Bertie Fisher's Cosworth. We'll be following their progress in this historic Circuit of Ireland, as well as following the progress of the entrants in the national event. But of course, we'll be focusing most of all on the battle for the major prize in the 1991 circuit. Will we be reporting on an Irish leader when we bring you the story of the opening day of the 1991 circuit? Time alone will tell.
looking forward to getting out in the car again, and you know, it's going to be a tough rally. It's not an easy rally. It's only 200 stage miles, but the stages are very, very difficult, and I think the guy who wins the rally will probably be the guy who can stay out of trouble, not necessarily the guy who's quickest on the first stage.